All right, welcome back everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are in Interlochen, Michigan today at the Interlochen Arts Academy, and we are meeting with Mr. Keith Aleo, who is the head instructor for percussion. And if you would, Mr. Aleo, tell us a little bit about your background, where you've taught before, and what it is that drew you to music.
Yeah, I was teaching at Boston Conservatory most recently, and that was 4 years ago. Prior to that, I was down at the University of Miami, and so I have quite a bit of teaching experience, and also worked for the Zildjian Company for a number of years in the education area. And what drew me to music, I think, was I was studying science, and I found that some of the theories and things I was studying didn't have any emotional impact. And I was really touched by music, by hearing music, opera. My father was an opera singer. My mother was a ballet dancer. Wow. And so as I heard music in the house, I kind of became drawn to it from an emotional standpoint.
I like that. So what kind of science were you studying?
Chemistry.
Well, my story is that I was in a chemistry class, and we were doing an experiment, and I literally walked out in the middle of the experiment, and the instructor said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I hate this. I'm doing experiments, and I already know the answer before I get started."
Right.
And I just started walking the building until I found exactly that. Something that drew me in emotionally, only I went psychology instead of music. But similar idea. It is, some people are drawn to one, and some are drawn to the other. But I think the assumption is that, much like, frankly, in psychology, I hear it all the time. The dumb girls study psychology. I go, excuse me. You know I'm a psychologist, right? Sometimes people think that music is an extra. My experience in watching my son Mitch is, this is not extra. This is a lot of work. Talk to me a little bit about the intensity of studying music versus maybe just playing it.
Yeah. I mean, music is something you do oftentimes by yourself. So, for example, the interaction with your teacher may be 1 hour, but say in a week, but then you would take, say, the rest of the week to practice by yourself in a room, perfecting the skills that you were shown by your teacher for, say, another, say, 12 hours. So you have 12 hours by yourself and then 1 hour with your teacher. So as an instructor, I often think I'm teaching you how to play something, but I'm also teaching you how to teach yourself. And I think that's really core to education in music, is to learn how to learn in the practice room. So I think it's a lot of time alone. And then in ensembles, you do spend time alone preparing your part, and you bring your part, your contribution to the ensemble into the room, and then you combine it with the others. But again, you're alone before you combine with the other students.
What's the benefit of being alone and having that time? Because that's a substantial amount of time, right?
Yeah.
When we talk about a kid learning math, they're going to do maybe an hour of homework a night. Even when you're in the university setting, you're doing a couple hours, but 12 hours, and I know some of these kids are doing 6, 7, 8 hours a day of practicing.
Yeah,
right,
the minimum I'm talking about, you have an hour with your teacher. The minimum, I'm thinking you're 2 hours a day over a period of 6, 7 days, 12 hours, 14 hours. Yeah. Many students will spend 3 times that. I mean, they will spend 6 hours a day practicing. And what is practicing? It's preparing what you were shown by your teacher. Your teacher says you want technically to be able to do the following 10 things. You work in a practice room using video, using mirrors, using self-evaluators to perfect the technique that you're working to the level you want to get to.
That is a lot.
Yeah, it's
right.
a lot.
So you're having to learn the physical element of it.
Yep.
You're having to self-correct.
Yep.
Then you're having to digest the meaning of the music.
Right.
And then you're having to interpret. And then you're having to bring all of that together.
And then you show up to your lesson where you are with your teacher by yourself and you are then presenting, here's the work I've done, and here's some of the questions I may have, but here's what I have.
So it's like a continuous assessment as well.
Yeah, the assessment, the best assessment, in my opinion, is the student on themselves. Learning how to assess, is my right hand sounding louder than my left hand? You know, listening, looking in a mirror, looking through video. Oh, my right hand is a little higher. How can I correct that?
So that, as a metaphor across learning life skills, you here have the students as borders. So the students all live here, right?
Yeah.
So are you seeing patterns in those that can self-assess and self-correct, and those that are able to do that in life as well?
Yeah. The ones that are able to, well, it's a little more complicated because I think there's a certain amount that has to do with dedication and passion. You know, certain students, I think, want to achieve. They want to achieve. They've been touched, similar probably to what happened to me, where I was attracted to music because of the emotional element.
Yeah.
It wasn't just numbers and theories and so on. I was drawn to it because it had something, an emotional piece. And so I wanted to do it. And certain students become so passionate that they do more than the 2 hours a day. They strive to self-assess better and better and better and want to achieve. And then there's students that
maybe don't quite take the same path. Well, and I mean, there's going to be in life, right? And sometimes that's a mismatch of interest area, and sometimes that's a human struggle as well. And it's something we talk a lot about in education, because in math, we're not getting the lessons you just described.
No.
Right?
Yeah, that is
in
correct.
chemistry, we're clearly not getting those
Right.
lessons, right?
Right.
And so music has this opportunity in a way that we simply don't have those opportunities in some of the other classes that students are expected to take. But in other schools, music is an add-on.
Right.
It's a maybe.
I know.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we're getting to a better point because there's been theories proven
Yes.
that the arts education actually helps you in all areas. And it's interesting because in my life I've known many people that have been musicians for gone through undergrad, graduate school, and then go into something else.
Yeah.
And they achieve very, very quickly, and I can't believe you show up on time all the time because in
Such a basic.
Yeah, yeah, but in music it's like you have a performance.
Yes.
You have to be
The
there.
show goes on whether you're there.
There's not, there's no, and I think maybe in other professions you don't have the intensity of the clock strikes. You got to be there. I mean, that's just the most basic level. But I think also the drive. You're in the room by yourself. You're driven to get this passage correct, and you keep working until you get it. And sometimes you become, I don't know if obsessed might be too strong a word, but you will do anything to get that passage correct. And I think when you transfer that into the business world or any other profession, you're driven to make things work.
What happens when a student achieves what they didn't think they could get to?
What happens? I mean, yeah, joy. Yeah, you realize your potential. You say, wait a minute, I thought I only could do this. You realize.
Yeah.
I've seen that here in this room.
Yeah.
Many, many times.
Well, and then of course what that happens later is, like you said, you get to that hurdle, and instead of backing down, you push to get over it.
Right.
And when you can't figure it out, you go find somebody to help you to figure it out. Just like one of the things that I would talk about with Mitch is that this was a community. Although they were all coming in to take lessons or perform for you or for anyone else, they were also working behind the scenes to help each other be better.
Yeah.
What do you think that kind of a community does for these kids going forward? In fact, I'll actually even pull this thread a little bit further. I remember when I first met you and you said something about how Mitch got along with his peers. That was going to be a good thing for his career. And I thought, he's 15. We're worried about his career already?
Yeah.
But you were looking at that beginning point and how they connect. So how important is it that the kids work together, even though they seemingly are, as you said, individual performers?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, music is an interesting thing because, for example, you play a piece and you might have never met this person. In fact, they could speak another language, and you perform with them. There's a certain special bond, and what happens in those particular moments is very unique. And you can record it. You can record it, audio recording, video recording, but what transpires between the musicians, the connection with the audience, is a very unique and special moment that is gone. No matter, the video never captures really what happened. And I think that type of bond in music and outside of music, in this environment where you're very close, you live in the same dorm or you live right next door, you're in kind of a bubble. I mean, it brings people together in unique and special ways. You share things that 20 years from now you say, do you remember when,
Yeah.
And do you remember that spot? That was such an awesome moment. Those kind of things.
Yeah. I mean, we actually use some of that. You'll hear about in fraternities. You'll hear about it in military when you have that joint experience, and sometimes it has to be a shared pain. So maybe it's that practicing that you're not getting that lick that you have to keep working on,
Right.
and then you have that shared getting over that hump,
Right.
and that bond is unbreakable, and then you start looking for that when you get into adulthood.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, I would agree with you. And it's interesting because you said what happens when the student achieves that. And I think to myself of a couple moments I've had right here in this room where there was a student working to get something and working, and I said, okay, we're gonna break it down. And we went through a whole series of exercises and they went away and then they came back and it got a little better and it got a little better and it kind of did this and then suddenly it kind of all happened. And you said, what happens at that moment? And she kind of fell apart. She's like, as it was, I can't believe I'm doing this, and it's a more spiritual experience, I think.
Yeah.
Teaching.
I have chills.
Yeah, it was like, I was having the experience. I would, on my end, I'm going, keep it together, be professional, but I was like so moved by her, just joy and that was realizing, gosh, if I really work on something really hard, I can get it,
Yeah. Well, one of the things I really like about the arts is this creative thinking process. But the second piece to it, and you're bringing this up really strongly, so I want to emphasize it, is the emotional piece.
Right.
So one of my most recent talks, I got up and I was talking about automation. And I said, it's really great to have a super fast car, but what good does it do you if you can't enjoy the experience of driving it?
Right.
And we're getting into this space where so many of the jobs and so much of what we do is knowledge-based, fact-based, and therefore is going to be automated in many ways. And so I think a lot about how we have to focus on experiencing life versus simply passing through it. How do you think music may play into that going into the future? And maybe really I should say the arts, because it is such an emotional space.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I don't know what to say, to be honest with you, because what comes to mind is the motivation.
Yeah.
All right, so the motivation for, I think, many people, and this is kind of a question. What is the motivator when you're in a junior or a senior in high school and you're deciding what major to be and what you want to ultimately do as your profession? What is the motivator?
Well, the motivator used to be, you need to get the job that we as your parents have decided you need to have. I know personally I went through this.
Right.
When Mitchell came and said, Mom, I found what I love. I'm going to be a musician. I said, what? You're going to what? He said, I want to go to this school, and I'm going to take fewer academics, and I'm going to do more music. I said, no. There was an asterisk next to that, and it said, figure out something you want to do that makes a lot of money. He goes, no, you told me to love something, and I love music. This is what I want to do. And I went, oh, I did say that. Oh, I did say that. And I think the conversation is changing. I think parents are starting to say, what do you love? What do you enjoy? What gives you that moment?
Right. But the motivator, I think, in many cases, maybe it is changing, but I find that the motivator is, what do I like doing? What makes a lot of money? Can flip it. Well, I just want to make a lot of money. You know, you're a senior in high school and you're starting to think, I'm in my life is gonna change, and I'm gonna have to get an apartment. I'm gonna have to get a car. I'm gonna have to get, clothes. I'm gonna have to have food, and most musicians do not think like that. Most musicians say, I want to do music, and the motivator is love and passion and goals. That the money isn't the motivator. I think that many musicians want to make as much money as possible, but I think they don't want, I think they want to make as much money as possible, but want to do what they are passionate about. And that's kind of, to me, that's a big deal. I think that sets artists in a different, as sort of, risk takers and crusaders. That's the word I use. The risk takers, they're like, and the parent says, there's not that many jobs. And
I know, that's what I was saying.
Right. And then you say, and they're, well, I don't care. I want it. I'm going to take that risk because I love it. Yeah, but what about money? Well, I don't care.
There was I don't know who it was, but it was like a director or somebody at Peabody Conservatory at Johns Hopkins. And it was to parents. And it said, here is your rubric for determining if you have an artist that needs to go to a conservatory. And he had 3 paragraphs, and it was like, one of them was, your kid is an excellent musician, everybody likes hearing them, they enjoy going to the concert, they practice regularly, they're phenomenal in their academics, this is a great kid. That was a no. And then it was, you have a kid who is exceptional in music, but is also exceptional in science or something else, and they spend equal time. That was a no. And then it was the last one, which is, I don't want to get up in the morning unless I'm going to get up and play music today. And I thought, oh my goodness, that is my child. And that was the yes, right? That was the one that said, this is my purpose for living, which is different. And so it begs the question, is an artist born or created? And even if it's not created, do those creative skills help substantially anybody? Because the process you were talking about, just learning how to handle your body, handle your hands, your following directions, learning skills, to getting over the hump, to finding what is working, isn't working, self-assessing. I mean, these are all skills regardless of what you use them for. Where do you find that mix? 'Cause I know you've seen kids who are this passionate type, and then you have some kids who maybe aren't going to. Do they still move?
So I believe it's both. I think some are so gifted, it's incredible. And they're gifted and they're hard workers and they just achieve. I think there's other students that are gifted and don't have the passion. It comes easy to them, and I find that sometimes they fail completely. I also have seen unbelievably hard workers and very little gift. It's like a slope like this, and they work 10 times harder than their colleagues, and they achieve nonetheless because they just work so hard.
Wow. So it's doable regardless.
I believe it is. Yes,
and
I do.
How about your students who are not necessarily passionate and also maybe aren't naturally gifted, right? But nonetheless are getting exposure to these processes. That doesn't mean they're necessarily going to learn all the skills, but do you see a transformation in them nonetheless, or some improvement in their understanding of life skills and patterns?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think because they have this weekly assessment. They have to come in and produce. It's different. It's not like math class. And I tell them that. I say, you get your 12 or 24 questions and you fill it out and then you just hand it back in and you're done, check. Well, that's not like that.
It's not clear.
It's not clear. No. I mean, I'll say you need to play page 6 and, the first 3 pages, but I don't say you have to have it at this level of musicality. I mean, I wouldn't say that.
It's more nebulous.
Yeah, I mean, when are you really done? You're never done.
Yeah.
You're never done with the 24 questions, like math. Check, I did my math homework.
I imagine that's anxiety provoking for some people.
I think so. Like, what is good?
Yeah.
And there comes the self-assessment. Well, I think this is pretty good. And a lot of times they come in and I'm like, this is not good at all. And they're going, wait, I thought I did a good job. Why is this not good? Well, you did what about this? What about that? And they say, oh, I didn't think about that. I didn't think about this. There's no sense of line. I don't know, what do you mean by line? Well, there's no direction to your notes. Oh, I see. Now, when you play it, I hear it, that kind of thing. So it's very different.
Yeah, well, and as I'm thinking about what you're saying, this gets to a comprehension level, right? There's a difference between your example. Here are the list of problems you have to do. Do them, turn it in, you're done. It's clear.
Right.
It may still be difficult, but it's clear. It's got a pattern. It's got a start point, a stop point.
Absolutely.
I know I've been at least successful in turning it in.
No stop point in music.
There's no stop point, but there's also not clarity of just playing the notes. In fact, I think you have one of your stickies up here. Don't play what you see if all you see is what is written.
Right.
Wow, I mean, that's profound. That's reading between the lines. That's seeing what was intended but not explicitly shared, and having to get somebody to that point. How do you walk a student through that? I mean, because that's a level of comprehension of beyond memorization for sure. I mean, there's just categorically different.
Yeah. How do you walk a student through it? So for it depends on the student.
Okay.
If you have the student that is trying to pass your class, then you get as specific as you can, and you say, I need, page 1 to 4 done by next week. Done. What is done? I think there are potentially some issues with them understanding what done is, because it's never done.
Right.
When is it ever done? Why are there so many recordings of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony? Why?
Yeah, because every single one of them is different.
It's different.
Yeah.
Right. So which one? We're done. We played it. We got that. I played it. Well, no. As you grow as a person, your interpretation changes. But I think it goes back to, for me, is passion and connection and love of music. How do I teach that? How do I teach them to achieve and see beyond the notes? I connect them with their inner feelings. I say, how do you feel about music? How do you feel about performing? Why are you doing this? Well, I love it. Well, do you love this piece? Yeah, I love this piece. What do you want to say to your listener? What do you want to say to your audience? What do you want to say to the person that you're giving this gift to? Or what story are you trying to say? What is your story? What is your interpretation of the notes? So I think the answer to your question is, I connect them with the passion that they have and why they're doing it and how they can transfer what their interpretation to the listener. It's about the listener. Music is about giving to your listener. You're giving them the experience, you're giving them the notes that are on the page and your interpretation. It's very personal. It is,
but it also sounds like it's perspective taking and communicating.
Yeah, communication,
right?
For sure.
Yeah,
and your perspective on it. And as you go through life, you play the piece. So, in my life, I played something when I was in high school. I also played that same piece on a graduate student, on my graduate recital.
Wow.
I also played the same piece for when I was auditioning for a job in college.
Not the same, I assume.
What? Somebody said, well, you already played it. Well, yeah, but, you know, I've changed and I see it differently now.
Yeah.
And then you do it again and you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I completely understand. I mean, we do the same thing in science. I never feel like the solution is there, but it's very confusing. I have this experience both in military as well as I think in society, where people say, I need an answer. And you will often find that a scientist will say, well, let me give you the 5 caveats because we don't have all the information.
Right.
One of my professors once said to me, this is my answer today, but I reserve the right to get smarter.
Right.
And so I use that a lot because in military, we can't simply say we're going to continue forever to work on something because they do need an answer. Right. And so what we go by is what we call the 80% rule. Here's my 80% answer today because this is the best we have under the circumstances.
Right.
However, I expect that our knowledge will mature, our understanding of the parameters will change, and at that point, when there's enough change, we will inform you and move it again. And I think it's the same for music, as you've just described it, is that at each of those development points, not only did you grow, but your understanding expanded as well.
Right. And your experience in life, your maturity, as you mature, you have a different perspective, as you said, on the piece. And what are you really sharing with your listener?
Yeah. I mean, these are just skills that, as we've talked a lot about throughout society, that people are questioning. How do we help our kids learn these things? We kind of bring this whole discussion full circle. I think the point I take from you is music, and actually I will expand it to the arts, is the opportunity to learn these skills.
Right.
Where the academic programs that we are so used to do not provide those opportunities. And so no matter how great those academics are, how necessary they are, our education, if we look at the whole person, is lacking then if we don't emphasize these opportunities to learn the human element of life.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's how I started. That's why kids come to this particular school. Yeah. They leave their home, they leave their house, their friends, they move into a dorm, and because they feel so passionate about, they want to achieve in music because they love it.
Now the question is, how do we help every student find what they love?
Right. It's funny, somebody asked me years ago, you know, if you had 3 wishes, like one of these silly tests or something, and they said, well, what would you do? One of the things that I said was, wouldn't it be amazing if every person worked a job that they loved? I love this job. This is the best job. And everybody had what they loved. So you would feel passionate about every job everywhere you go. So you go to someplace and the person that has this job loves their job and they impart love to you and they do a great job at their job.
It's utopia.
It would be utopia.
So
if everybody loved what they did, like musicians and artists love what they do, wouldn't that be an interesting...
So I'm trying to think how you would create that, and I think it's back to one of your points. How do you decide junior year what you want to do? And what do we give people? We give them a standardized test that asks them about their academic capabilities. We make them study until they get to the point where they feel that they have achieved based on someone else's rubric.
Yep.
Alternatively, if we brought people in and said, tell me about you.
Right.
Tell me about your perfect world. Mm-hmm. And you measured your life or your job or your success by how fulfilled your life was versus how much money you had.
Right.
I have to say, I have some faith in the young people. We have tiny houses coming. We have people that are measuring on points other than money. We're not, to your point, we're not 100% there. But I do think the door is opening where people are starting to ask these questions. And I think what the job of people like me is to do is to find a way to create the infrastructure
to make that
possible.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting. People talk about my career path, and I mentioned, you know, I worked for Zildjian, and I have been an educator. But it's interesting. Right now, I make much less money.
I'm sure.
My salary is at one of the lowest points in my life. My happiness is at the highest point. And so instead of making more money throughout my life, and oftentimes I think a lot of people become less I'm the exact reverse. I'm making less money and my happiness is increasing because I made choices. I made choices not to work in certain areas of music. I've made choices not to work in certain aspects of music. I just wanted to I want my goal. I wake up in the morning, what is my goal? My goal is to help students to get what they aspire to in their life. They aspire, I want to do this in my life. I want to do that in my life. My job isn't to, you better practice your stick technique 3 times a day. No, my job, what is your aspiration? I want this. My job is to try and help them achieve that in their life. That's my gig. My gig is to help. Students will play for me and I say, let me see, you want some help? And they say, yeah, I'm really struggling. They want that. That's completely different experience than a math class or
Yeah.
It's
It's external versus internal.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that's exactly right.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for sharing your vision with us. I think this is what we need to do. We need to find people's passions, and we need to create the possibility to measure in that capacity. I will say, what happens when everybody does what they love is that you have a society that works.
Right. If everybody enjoyed what they did, they were happy. Yeah. And the motivator wasn't money. The motivator was happiness. I followed that.
Yeah.
I followed that.
Here we go. Mm-hmm. Happiness measurements. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.